when you film once a month. Hello everybody, I'm Anna.
And I'm Michelle.
And we're the Two Mythical Unicorns. And this is the first episode of our Reading Around the World.
Yay!
Yes! So we wanna try reading different stuff and from different countries. So we decided that we're gonna choose one country each month and read a book from that country.
Yeah.
To
broaden our horizons.
yeah, exactly.
Well, the setup is that we'll pick a country each on alternate months.
Yeah.
So either you've already picked a book that you're like, I want to read this, and it is from a country you haven't read by an author you haven't read.
Yeah.
So you can do that. There's different guidelines for how you can pick your country.
Yeah. But we take turns.
Yes.
Picking country. And if you have any suggestions as to what countries we should choose, just leave a comment down below and maybe we'll get to it.
And also suggest a book or an author in that case. That'd be helpful.
Yeah. And when we choose a book from an author from that country, it should be from an author we haven't read before.
Yes.
Yes. And the author should have lived there
for an extended period of time at least, and somehow identifies with the culture or the country in some way.
Yes.
We can read the same book.
Yes.
For instance, no rereading, obviously, because
an author you haven't read
before.
Yeah.
You can read an autobiography.
Yes.
In the non-fiction genre.
Yeah.
It has to do with the culture in some way. Like there's a point to you reading that particular autobiography from that country.
Yeah. So not straight up, just facts.
Non-fiction. Yeah. Those are the guidelines.
Yes, those are the guidelines. So first country, it was
I picked.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be very surprising. Or was it? I picked Japan.
Yes.
I've been reading a lot of Japanese fiction in the last 3 years, I'd say. So it's always kind of on my radar, and I'd just bought a new book by a Japanese author, so I was like, let's just start with that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't particularly difficult for you to find a book either.
No.
Starting up easy.
Yeah.
We could both easily find a book.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
Yes.
So we said we'd discuss a little bit about our previous sort of experience with the cultures of the countries we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So I think you have actually more experience technically with Japanese culture than I do, so why don't you start?
Yeah, I don't really know how much with Japanese culture per se, but I watched a lot of anime.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah. And I've watched a lot of fantasy anime in specific. I've watched a few slice of life animes. You pick up on stuff even if it's all in a made up world with made up people doing things you can't do in the real world. You still pick up on things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know a bit, but yeah.
I think I might have read quite a lot of Japanese fiction rather than experiencing it in other ways. I have watched 2 J-dramas, which is always interesting. I've also pretty recently, within the last year, gotten into Studio Ghibli films, and those are Japanese. So that's about my understanding of Japanese culture in particular. I would say for the book that I'm going to talk about in particular, they talk a bit about how they address each other, because that's particular. I have a bit of understanding of that because I have more understanding of South Korean culture.
Yeah.
And they have a similar system. It's just different words and different ways of addressing. So if you're not aware of that you put a little prefix or something like that before a name, and it's all of a sudden very affectionate.
Yeah.
It'll be different. It's difficult for a Westerner to understand.
Yeah.
That in particular, because it's I don't get it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you can pick up even if you're watching a fantasy anime.
Yeah, exactly. There are certain things you notice how they address each other and different ways of doing that because it's different formalities and things.
Yeah.
So like it's nice having that understanding, but you don't necessarily need it to read the books, I would say.
Yeah. I've read 2 Japanese books as well. Except watching all the anime and reading some manga. I've read 2 actual Japanese books.
Right.
Yeah.
I've read about 10, 15? Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've read quite a little bit of translated fiction from Japan.
Yeah. You do your pick first?
I read Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mitsuki Sugimura. Obviously a Japanese name. I'm terrible at pronunciations, I apologize. This is a coming-of-age fantasy story about a young girl who doesn't want to go to school for different reasons that you'll find out when you read it. So she spends her days at home. And one day her mirror starts glowing, as it does. And she realizes she can walk through it and ends up in a wondrous castle with, I think, 7 other children around her age. And there is a girl in a wolf mask who gives them some instructions and says that they have to find a secret room within the castle within a certain amount of time, and one of them can make a wish that'll certainly come true. And that's the setup of the book.
And I had this on my to-read list,
Yes.
actually. So I chose Shadow of the Fox by Yuli Kagawa, and I ended up reading the entire trilogy. It's about a girl, she's a kitsune, which means she has some magical powers, and she was raised by monks in a temple, and that is all she has known. And she's 16, I think, something like that. And then she finds out that she has a special purpose. She was left there with a note saying that she was supposed to do something big, and this temple is guarding a special scroll with some magic. And then the temple is attacked, and she is the sole survivor and has this scroll and supposed to take it to a safe space. And then we have the other main character who is supposed to get this scroll for his master, because he's from a clan. He's a demon slayer.
As you are.
Yeah, shadow clan sort of stuff. And the 2 meet, of course. So yeah, that is the premise of this. And a lot of stuff happens because there are 3 books.
Yeah.
Those were the books we read.
Good.
Yes. So, what did you think of the book?
I really liked it. It's not like a 5 out of 5 next favorite book, but it was very good. It's well written. You fall in love with all of the characters for different reasons. Trust the process, because you'll be very confused most of it, because you're like, why? What's happening? Because they don't understand it. They don't know.
No.
So you're sort of following someone who's like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? But it'll all come together beautifully at the end of the book. And I will say, I did cry quite a bit finishing up this book. It was very, very good and very impactful. And if you have triggers for bullying and similar things, be careful about this one. It's not graphic in any way, but if that's something that you feel very uncomfortable around, probably not your cup of tea. Just as a warning. But it's beautiful and it was very, very good.
Yeah, I obviously liked it. Since I read all 3.
To be fair, you don't have to particularly like a story to finish it.
No, but there has to be something.
Yeah.
Anyways, I liked it. I enjoyed it. It is somewhat of like a typical YA fantasy book and setting, but it also has Japanese culture within it, like kitsune, and they have like different clans and shinobi, and in the book they have translated, so it's English, but then there are some words that are Japanese.
Oh.
So since I have watched my share of anime, I know a few words with like a few words. The first time it happened, I was a bit confused and was like, oh, she's saying Mina as in all of you.
Oh.
Like that kind of thing. So it was good to have some knowledge of the Japanese culture to read it, and the more you get into it, the easier it gets. But yeah, if you live in the Western world and you are used to that culture and have had nothing to do with Asian or Japanese culture, and you don't know fantasy, this is probably not the place to start. It had like few moments where it felt very Japanese, and yeah,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it had these moments that were slow, not boring, but just the Japanese, they take their time with things, and it can be very beautiful. You get more of their inner thoughts.
I was gonna say, it's often more internalized than we are used to as Westerners reading YA fantasy things like that, I'd say.
Not as fast paced.
Yes.
But it's not boring.
Does it get better as it goes on? Or is it like the same level? Or does it get worse? Would you say?
It doesn't get worse.
No? Good. That's always a good thing. You never know which trilogy.
If it's the same or if it gets better, it's hard to say. It goes a bit up and down. I really enjoyed the ending because they have a different culture. Yeah. So it's not the typical ending per se. There are a few things that happen where I went, oh, this was not what I expected. Really enjoyed it.
Good.
We were gonna present the next country.
Yes.
So next up it was my choice, and then I thought I would go completely to the other side of the world and go South America. And how I chose my particular country was I googled South American fantasy authors.
As you do.
Yeah. And from that I chose Mexico. Mexico is the next country.
Yes.
Do we present the books we have chosen?
It was funny because you did tell me what book and author you'd chosen.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I'll find something. And I started Googling like frantically because I was like, I don't know anything about this. And I'd somewhere in that Google entirely forgotten what you'd chosen and found something. I was like, I could read this. This sounds interesting. And then I told you, I was like, this author, she grew up in Mexico, but she left for Canada in her teens. And you were like...
It was for college, I think.
Yeah. And you were like, wait a second.
Because it was, does this still count?
Because
she left Mexico. But it's like, if you lived in Mexico until you were 19, you know the culture.
Yeah, exactly. And you were like, there's no way there's two different authors that's done this. And it wasn't two different authors.
No. So we've chosen the same author and the same book.
Yes.
And that is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is the next one, if anyone wants to read it and know what we talk about in the next video.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, bye!
Bye!